Hi, my name is In Jin Moon and welcome to I Home Church. If this is your first time joining us, don't forget to subscribe to our email list. Today, I want to talk a little bit about embracing the downs in our life. I was listening to the radio the other day, and one of my favorite songs by an artist named Chris Cornell came up on the radio. It's called I Only Love You When I'm Down. And basically, it's a torrid and a fantastic love song. But he's basically saying in the chorus that he only loves you when he is down. But then he lets us know that he is down all the time. In other words, he loves you all the time. But I thought about, this word down and what it means to a lot of us. And I think for a lot of people in a religious community, we're always looking for the great hallelujah. We're always looking for the highs in our faith. And many times we are afraid to confront the downs or the dark side of life. And, I've thought about many talks that were given by a famous evangelist, Dwight L. Moody, and he talked about three different types of faith. He says that there's number one, there's a faith called a struggling faith, and he uses the imagery of the boat to signify a place or a refuge or a shelter that one has with God. But when you are somebody suffering from a struggling faith, you are nowhere near the boat. In fact, you are floundering out in the open sea, and you are absolutely terrified and afraid of the deep, dark waters. But then he says there's another kind of faith, which is called clinging faith. And with this kind of a faith, you have your hand on the boat, but you're clinging on for dear life. And you're struggling so badly just to maintain your weight and hold yourself up above water. And then he says there is the third type of faith that he very much recommends, and that is the resting faith, where you are not away from the boat floundering, you are not merely hanging on or clinging on for dear life, but you are actually resting in the boat. You are in the safe refuge or shelter of God. And in that way, in terms of your faith, you have totally surrendered yourself completely to God in his care and in your trust of God. But I often felt that understanding was somewhat lacking, in that I often ask the questions, well, it's all wonderful to surrender everything to God and put everything in God's care. But then aren't we just being like young adults that always and constantly wants to be taken care of by our parents? Well, what about our responsibility of owning our lives and being grateful for everything that our heavenly parent, our God, has given us, but taking charge and really living a life that is worthy of testifying about who God, our heavenly parent, is. So I often thought, how wonderful would it be if our faith was not just a resting faith, in that we surrender everything and God takes care of everything, but if we really own our faith and our faith become a living faith, in essence, a faith that is breathing, that understands the importance of breathing out and breathing in, and we have to be alive in order to do all the wonderful things that we would like to do. And so when I thought about, how important it is to have or enjoy a faith that is living or breathing, I thought about this conversation that I had with my father many, many years ago during the fishing season in Gloucester. I used to love taking books with me out on the sea. Back in those days, I didn't really totally embrace the honor that I had of spending months with my father during the summer vacations, because I wanted to be on land with my friends and with my buddies, doing things and going places. But because I was the one who didn't get seasick, I was appointed to accompany my father fishing every day. And so many times I would bring different books on board, and I would bring my sketchbook, and I would kind of take advantage of the fact that I had my father alone up on the second floor of the New Hope. That was my father's boat. And so one day, I was reading something and looking through the different pictures of this particular book, and father said, "What are you reading, In Jin?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I finished reading all my required summer vacation reading that the school assigned. But I wanted to revisit this one book because I kind of like the drawing, and sometimes it's nice to just look at simple drawings and just simple words and remind you of the first time I was learning English, because that was one of the books that was used to teach me English." And so father said, "Well, tell me the story." And the book was called The Giving Tree by Silverstein. And, you can find this book practically on every library shelf that you go to. It's been in publication for over 5 decades, and I'm sure it's been translated into every language imaginable. But on this day, I was telling father, the drawings are really beautiful, and I was thinking about writing or illustrating a book that I had in mind. And so father said, "Well, tell me the story." And so I opened the book and I explained the story to my father. And I said, it's basically a story about this tree that is incredibly giving and incredibly loving towards this boy. And it just gives everything, literally everything that it has to the boy. But the boy, comes back year after year, and he grows older and his needs become wider. And ultimately, he ends up not just taking away the fruits, the apples from the tree to be sold because he wanted money, and the tree had nothing to give but apples. But the boy comes back after years and years of not even thinking about the tree, and now wants a house. And the tree responds by saying, "Well, I don't have anything to give you, but you can certainly take my branches and build yourself a house." Then the boy goes away, and after many years of not coming back to say hello to his tree friend, he comes back and says one day, "Well, I want a boat." And so the tree gives its trunk so that he can take the trunk and build himself a boat and travel around the world. And basically, the story closes with the boy being a very, very old man, and very little to live on or go on, or very little to hope for in life. And the tree says, "Well, I really don't have anything to give you other than my stump, which you can rest on." And so the closing image of the book is this old man that sits on the tree stump, and the book ends with, "And the tree was happy." And so I explained this to my father, and father says, "Yeah, it's a good book, but the tree could have been a better tree if it was a wise tree." And father said, "Here is this giving tree, always, always giving, but it forgot to do the wise thing, and it forgot to teach the boy to be a good person, or to be a giving person. Because if the tree could have helped, not just given everything of herself to the boy just to keep him happy all the time, but even if the boy would be maybe angry or depressed or down at times, if the tree was willing to be there for the boy, to really kind of help him understand that sometimes it is through the downs or the difficulties in life that we grow. And if the tree was supportive and nurturing to help the boy grow together, then the boy would have grown into a giving person, just like the tree was a giving tree. And in so doing, they would have enjoyed a much richer relationship." And, of course, when father gave this explanation to me many, many years ago, I was just a very, very little girl. But over the years, I would revisit the book, because I have 6 children of my own. Now I have a 2-year-old, and here I am with the Giving Tree book again. And it reminded me of the conversation that I had with my father. And in a way, the book is a fantastic book because it really shows the beauty of a giving heart. But what my father was talking about was how can the tree be more than a giving tree by really being a living tree or a breathing tree, something that lives along with the boy, that grows along, that journeys on with the boy. Because then in the end, their relationship would have been incredibly different than the one that the giving tree had. Because the giving tree, it was a one-sided relationship. It wasn't really a relationship when it concerned this boy who grew into an old man. In many respects, the boy just took advantage of this, poor giving heart of this giving tree. And at the end of the tree's life, the tree wants to be happy because the tree is a wonderful and a good-hearted tree. But in terms of the relationship that they could have enjoyed, a deep and a meaningful relationship, well, that opportunity was lost. So when I reread the book, I realized that what my father was talking about was he was trying to teach me that, one-sided relationship is not healthy. And just as God wants a relationship with us, in that God created all of these things, all of us, but if we just ended up acting like that little boy, our relationship with God will not be fulfilling to God or to us. What God wants is a real and a genuine and a healthy and a breathing relationship. And that's why he created all of his children, you and me. So when I think about the book, it's really a reminder for me to understand that the importance is not always in giving the branches. It's not always in giving the tree trunks. It's not always in giving the fruit. But the importance is in also sharing the importance or the core or the root of who we are. If the tree, instead of just giving of its apples, could have told the boy incredible stories about how the great Creator God created the tree and how God has prepared the fertile earth to preserve and to nurture all of these incredible plants and flowers, imagine the kind of relationship that they could have enjoyed, having give and take. But the tree didn't realize that there was much more to giving or to having a loving heart than just one-sided relationship. But if the tree really understood that the greatest gift that the tree could give to the boy was to help the boy find his root or his core, then they would have had an incredible relationship throughout the years. And another thing that the story, The Giving Tree, reminds me of is the importance of embracing or accepting or acknowledging or not being afraid of the downs in our life or the difficulties in life. Many times in our effort to love somebody, we're really afraid to tell people the truth, how we genuinely feel. Many times, growing up, I didn't want to tell my parents how I honestly felt because I just wanted to give. I just wanted to make them happy. But I realized after many, many years, it didn't do either of us any good because they didn't know me and I certainly didn't know them any better. And had I taken the steps to embrace the downs or the difficulty and use that opportunity to deepen and strengthen the relationship, our relationship would have been far better and much more rewarding. And I think the same could be said of husband and wife relationships too. Many times we don't want to deal with the downs. We don't want to go through or embrace the downs as an opportunity for great lessons to be learned. Many times in relationships between husband and wife, we want to avoid the difficulties or avoid the downs as much as possible, as if avoiding it or sweeping it under the rug will make it go away. Well, it never does. In fact, it makes it worse. But if we can embrace the difficulties of life, embrace the downs, and understand that it's really an opportunity for us to grow in our relationship, to really deepen our understanding of each other, regardless of how difficult it might be, and understand that, we have the highs and the downs in anything that we encounter in life. We can't just have 24-hour romantic holidays, because then after some time, it's not going to be too romantic. It's going to be quite a task. You can't be happy all the time. There's got to be moments when we are happy. There's got to be moments when we're serious. There's got to be moments when we might be frustrated. But there are moments when we have this incredible breakthroughs. And this is what makes life incredibly rich. But if we are only seeking this extreme euphoria or extreme highs and want to avoid the downs, then we're not going to have a balanced relationship in our marriage or a balanced relationship with anybody that we care to have a relationship with. And so I think the giving tree is a great example to kind of take a moment and think about what it means to be giving in our life. But is our giving producing the kind of results that we want? Many times we don't think about that. Many times we think, if we just give and love our children, they will grow up to be incredible and awesome people. Well, that is certainly not the case. Children need discipline. They need guidance. They need incredible amounts of giving in terms of our love and support. But they need to learn sometimes the hard way. They need to fall on their knees and scrape their knees. And they need to go through difficult moments in their life. And we as parents need to give them the freedom to do so. I know that this may sound, quite revolutionary to many of us in religious communities, but most of our incredibly important work of parenting takes place between the years of 1 and 12 years old. After that, if the solidness of their relationship with us is not strong, then it's going to take us through many, many different avenues and many different pathways before we find ourselves again in our children's adult lives. And so we have to understand that as much as we love them, no matter how much we love them, we have to give them room for them to exercise their 5% responsibility. And come rain or shine, learn to take ownership of their life. That's really the only way they're going to become balanced, healthy, and grateful people. And the most difficult thing as a parent is to sometimes let that happen. But we have to be willing to embrace the downs in order to celebrate the highs in our life with those people that we love. And the important thing, another important thing about the book, The Giving Tree, is, again, it stresses the importance of a dynamic relationship of giving and receiving. If it's just giving, or just receiving, the relationship is not going to fare too well. If we're only breathing in, sooner or later, we're going to die. If we're only breathing out, sooner or later, we're going to die. And the only way we can be breathing and living and going about our business as wonderfully inspired and empowered people is if we are enjoying the giving and the receiving energy that comes from a healthy relationship. So many times I think that us Asian moms, and I am definitely somebody who had to kind of go through this myself, and we have a tendency to take care of everybody in our family, so much so that it makes it difficult for our children to learn to do things on their own. And I think a lot of Asian moms, we want to cook and we want to clean and we want to do everything for our children, that many times I've seen grown men and women that does not know how to wash dishes or do their own laundry or to make simple meals, because the mother was always there. And the mother was the giving tree, always giving and giving and giving, incredibly beautiful heart. But the role of the mother is to do much more than give. It's also to support, to guide, to discipline sometimes, and share. And in so doing, help the child become independent, healthy young men and women of God. And sometimes we are our worst enemies in that we give so much that our children just learn to take, and they don't learn how to give. And so I think this is an important lesson to think about and to realize that, again, give and receive. I don't know how many times different teachers or advisors have told me throughout my life that life is like a sine curve. You have your ups, you have your downs, you have your highs, and you have your lows. But the most important thing is to keep the trajectory on the right path. And as long as the trajectory is on the right path, then it's natural to go through cycles of highs and lows and up and down. That's what makes life rich. That's what makes us human. And one of the things that Father always said during the switching season is, you gotta learn how to ride the waves down in the middle of the storm. Because if you don't know how to properly ride the waves down in the storm, your ship is going to turn over, keel over, and everybody will die. My father has gone to prison 6 times in his life. And the incredible thing about my father is that certainly being thrown in prison could be understood or seen as the down in somebody's life. But what he does is he goes to prison, and not only does he win converts everywhere he goes, he comes out of prison with new members, testifying to them about God and the importance of living a life following the divine principle. But what he does is he wins model prison awards in prison by being the best prisoner. And that's an incredible thing, because my father's heart in really wanting to be the best prisoner is he will treat, no matter where you put him, as an opportunity to serve, an opportunity to contribute. And so no matter where he is, even if he is in prison, he's not just going to sit there for years on end complaining about how the government did him wrong. He's going to accept that he is there. He is still going to have a giving and a loving heart, but he's going to have more than just a giving and a loving heart. He's actually going to do something about it by cleaning the toilets, by cleaning the cafeteria, keeping his room clean and in an orderly fashion, being courteous to other prisoners, so much so that the prison has to recognize and award him the Best Prisoner Award. So what can we learn from Father's example in his time in prison? Well, he does a couple things. Number one, no matter where you put him, he always tries to make the place better than he found it. In other words, just the mere simple task of cleaning up your environment can vastly change your perspective on life, and you might actually feel more inspired to do great things in your life and in our lives. And I know that spring cleaning does wonders, not just for our family, but I think for the way we can enjoy our life in our home. But another thing that Father does is no matter what, he doesn't isolate himself into a corner, and he doesn't, sit back and say, well, I'm in prison, I'm not happy to be here, so I'm just going to take what prison gives me and just live with it until I get out. That is not my father's response to his time in prison. He never complains, and he really treats that time as an opportunity to do something wonderful. So instead of maybe complaining and sitting back and say, well, I'm fed 3 times a day, so I'm just going to sit here and chill and write out my sentence. Father, what he does is he really gets down and dirty and does the things that people do not want to do, which is cleaning toilets, working extra shifts. If somebody is too tired and doesn't want to do their chores, then my father will many times volunteer to do the chore of another person. And in so doing, set a wonderful example of really living for the sake of others. And at the same time, be that kind of a person that can generate the feeling of gratitude no matter where he finds himself. So he is always testifying about importance of having a relationship with God in our lives. But not only is he talking the talk, but he is walking the walk by really being there, down and dirty with the prisoners, but in a way showing them a way that regardless of how down and dirty our lives or our situations can be, we can still hold our head up high as God's children and live with dignity and really do the right thing by thinking how we can contribute to make our environment better. And so instead of wasting the opportunity, seizing upon the opportunity and taking control of our environment and taking control of our lives and leaving something wonderful behind, such as a model prison award when he is released from prison. And so this is kind of like the win-win philosophy that my father has had all throughout his life, that not just really helped him to become a wonderful husband, a wonderful father, and a wonderful teacher, but it helped him to become incredibly successful in life. Because it doesn't matter where he is going to use this win-win philosophy and take any situation and turn it into something magnificent, turn it into something better, turn it into some kind of a contribution that can be good for everybody involved. And that's the magic that my father shares with all of us in his example during his prison terms. So we have to learn how to navigate the downs of our life with the right kind of a artistic attitude, knowing that if we write it down correctly, it will create an incredible momentum, incredible energy that will help us catapult us up into the high atmosphere, or the highs or the ups of life that we long to experience in our life. And so as we are experiencing the downs, or the difficulties of life, it's a good, wonderful time to remind ourselves, Many times I think we as children or we as young adults, we just want to fly as high as we possibly can. We just want to go on these long flights to some exotic destinations. But no matter how high we fly, if we really want to enjoy these exotic locations or these exotic, fascinating, compelling destinations, or enjoy our vacation, it doesn't matter how high we fly, we need to come down. We need to come down so that we can come off the plane and enjoy the exotic location where we want to have our fantastic vacations. So again, No matter how high we fly, or many times in a religious community, we have our heads up in the clouds many times. I myself have been there. But again, when Father says we have to learn how to navigate or ride the waves down, he is reminding us that it is incredibly important to understand the importance of coming down. And I understand this so much more when I read the Deuteronomy, chapter 33, verse 27, where it says, God is our eternal refuge. God is our eternal shelter, our eternal house, eternal home. And underneath are his everlasting arms. Many times we forget those everlasting arms that are underneath, that are in the core of who we are, that are buried deep beneath the earth where our roots are, because we sometimes forget to see them. But it is underneath where we will find God's everlasting arms. So it's not always on top. It's not always the branches. It's not always the fruits. It's not always the trunk. But it is underneath. It is the down, in the downs, that we find everlasting arms. And so we should find eternal hope and eternal comfort, knowing that the Bible teaches us that it doesn't matter how low or how down our life might be, underneath we will find everlasting arms of God. And see, that's the incredible thing about having God as our Heavenly Parent. It doesn't matter how high we fly, or how low we sink, or how much we are floundering, in our downs. All we need to do is remember who we are, and that we are everlasting and divine eternal sons and daughters of God. And the Bible reminds us, underneath, in our downs, we will find everlasting arms or everlasting embrace of God. So with that in mind, there is nothing that we cannot accomplish. And with that in mind, we really have incredible reason why to be grateful in our daily lives. And so if we can have the right frame of mind through the ups and downs of life, through the highs and lows of life, and understand that this is really all an opportunity to help us really develop or find or appreciate the core of who we are or our roots, then we realize that this life is an incredible gift, an incredible journey where we learn to find ourselves as God's children in a more profound, powerful, and in a deep way each and every day of our lives. So don't forget what Father says when Father says, gotta learn how to ride the waves down. And in so doing, you are preparing to catapult all your dreams and all the hopes that you have up to high heaven. And you can celebrate it together with our Heavenly Parent. So I certainly want to do that, don't you? If so, have a great day and a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Stones, I dug deep and I found you there, a big pile of the bones. Baby, baby, blow after blow, and sometimes I feel like I just cannot go on. But one more time, let it all out, let it show what it's all days turn to weeks. Weeks turn to many years. This road I must keep. Baby, baby, blow after blow. And sometimes I feel like I just cannot go on. But one more time, let it all out. Let it show what it's all about. I know down is the only way out. It's right, you can scream and shout. Hold your head up and still be proud. I know down is the only way out. So I eat it up, it's a lot. Takes all that I got in me. When it's over, I can shoulder much colder times than these. Whoa, ba, 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 ba. One more time, let it all out. Let it show what it's all about. I know down is the only way out. It's right, you can scream and shout. Head your head up and still be proud. But I know down is the only way out. I know down is the only way
If you have any questions and comments, leave them below the video or go to injinmoon.com and use the contact form. And don't forget to subscribe to our email list. Thanks.